I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more.
It's a commonly held misconception that the Earth is a spherical object that revolves around the Sun. But the fact is, of course, that the Earth is a circular dish surrounded by a barrier of ice that explorers have been attempting to penetrate for centuries. 2,000 years ago, an Egyptian scholar by the name of Eratosthenes performed an experiment that he claimed proved the Earth to be a sphere. However, there are serious doubts about the accuracy of his data and his scientific procedures. Dr. Leo Ferrari explains.
The Eratosthenes experiment is an experiment supposedly conducted in the 1st century, whereby this ingenious person was supposed to have proved, I say that in quotes, that the Earth was a sphere of some 4,000 miles radius. Eratosthenes one day noticed that the Sun was directly overhead in Syene, whereas he noticed that on the same day, at the same time, the Sun made an angle of 7.2 degrees to the vertical at Alexandria, which was some 530 miles away. How did Eratosthenes in the 1st century know what the Sun was doing on the same day in two places which are 530 miles apart? One can take all those same data, knowing that the Earth is flat. In one place you have the Sun directly overhead, and at another place, at the same time, at 530 miles away, let us suppose that it does make an angle of 7.2 degrees to the vertical. Then we have a right-angled triangle, which it can be easily shown that the Sun is some 4,000 miles up in the sky. These superficial, even, considerations show that it's impossible. The whole thing, it's a story, a fairy story made up and mindlessly repeated in textbooks.
Fortunately, not all scientific arguments are based on such questionable research. The Greek astronomer Ptolemy determined to everyone's satisfaction that the Earth is flat, circular, and the central body in the universe. His theory went unchallenged for 1,200 years. Not surprising, really. One need only look around. However, the notion that it was some other shape gained some acceptance during the Renaissance. These were impoverished times. Most writers, artists, and scientists could not support themselves through their work. They depended on the patronage of the upper class. Consequently, creative and original thinking men let their imaginations run rampant in order to attract support. In 1543, the Polish astronomer Copernicus suggested the bizarre notion that the Earth is a round ball that circles the Sun. But his book emphasized it was only a hypothesis. He further avoided controversy by withholding the book for 13 years, and then by dying on the day it was published. So Copernicus' notion that the Earth was a ball you couldn't fall off of was readily embraced by businessmen. And when Magellan's crew claimed to have circumnavigated the globe in 1522, it was seen as a new piece in the scientific puzzle. But more importantly, it was seen as a strong psychological boost for free enterprise. It's also been seen as a huge publicity stunt. The argument, for all practical purposes, came to an end when the Church of England was established by law during the 16th century. They rejected many laws of the ancient Catholic Church, and to appear forward-thinking, they embraced many radical scientific notions prevalent at the time, including Copernicus' round Earth theory. With this endorsement, the theory found its way into the schools, which were then largely controlled by the Church. It has remained there to this day, and many children have accepted it without question.
There's all kinds of proofs right around you that show that the Earth is flat. A very simple one to think of is that we use plumb bobs to build buildings. In other words, to get the wall of a building going straight down, you'll take a string with a heavy weight hanging from it, and you make the building follow that string. That plumb bob will point to the center of a round earth. That means that if you imagine that this was the correct earth, you can imagine a plumb bob held here would point in that direction, and a plumb bob held here would point in that direction. That means the buildings would be bigger on the top than at the bottom.
It would also mean that boats would constantly be sailing downhill. And invariably, in any discussion about the shape of the Earth, the first argument used in support of its rotundity is that as ships sail out to sea, the tops of their masts are visible longer than the hull.
The fact is, of course, that the light rays from the lower part of the ship are no longer reaching the shore.
The sailor thinks that he's traveling around the Earth this way, when in effect he's traveling around the Earth this way. And he's creating a circle. He's moving in a continuous direction around. He goes through the various parts of the circle, and he comes back where he started from. Swung around this way.
Does running round your neighborhood prove that the neighborhood is round?
Samuel Burley Rowbottom, better known throughout the scientific community as Parallax. In 1881, he had published this book, Earth Not a Globe. Outlining dozens of experiments performed over many years, it quickly became the standard authority for anti-globularists. Perhaps the most significant experiments were those carried out on a canal known as the Old Bedford Level. Located in Cambridgeshire, England, the canal is perfectly straight over an uninterrupted 6-mile stretch. While there, Parallax conducted many experiments, all towards one conclusion: to prove that the surface of the water in the canal was indeed perfectly flat. In one experiment, a boat carrying a flag rowed from one bridge to another 6 miles away. An observer with a telescope placed 8 inches above the surface of the water found that the flag and the boat were distinctly visible throughout the entire distance. If the Earth is a sphere with a circumference of 25,000 miles, then over a distance of 6 miles, the second bridge should mathematically be 16 feet below the observer's eye line. Through time-lapse photography, the velocity of these clouds has been dramatically increased. While they were actually drifting over the mountains at approximately 27 miles per hour, they now have the appearance of moving at well over 100, 4 times their normal speed. If the clouds were stationary and the Earth was revolving underneath them, this is how it would appear if the Earth was spinning at 100 miles per hour. Yet we're told that the Earth is spinning at 10 times that speed. Consider this. Those who maintain that the Earth is a globe that spins suggest that people standing at the equator are being whirled around at approximately 1,000 miles an hour. They further maintain that the Earth is spinning around the Sun at a speed of 67,000 miles per hour, and that our Sun is supposedly racing around the center of our galaxy at some 600,000 miles per hour. And yet, you and I both know that on many days it's possible to stand outside without a single hair being messed up by the breeze.
You put your hand outside a window of a car which is going even at 80 kilometers per hour, a terrific wind goes blasting by and pushes your hand back. Imagine putting your hand outside the window of a car that's going 1,600 kilometers per hour. We just take your hand right off.
With a sphere of 4,000 miles radius being spun round once every 24 hours, a little bit of calculations will show that that person there is being spun round at about 1,000 miles an hour and doesn't know it. I mean, this is obvious nonsense. You go on a merry-go-round and it goes, I doubt, more than 10 miles an hour, and you get off all dizzy. You mean to tell me that people can be spun round at approximately 1,000 miles an hour and not know it? Why, if this is so, this whole room that we're in is supposedly being spun round at something of approximately that order of speed, and we don't know it.
There's all kinds of evidence for the phenomenon of what's called continental drift. This means that the continents are able to move as if they're floating on a fluid. Now, if the Earth is spherical, and if it's spinning, anybody knows that if this is spinning very, very, very fast like that, that the continents should all be located at the equator, because centrifugal force would move the continents from the poles to the middle. One of the real big problems that maybe is a little bit easier to understand, sound doesn't travel nearly that fast. So, for example, if you're at the equator and you wanted to shout to warn somebody, it's quite possible they could never hear you, because if you were shouting, say the Earth was spinning in this direction, and you were shouting in that direction, the sound could never catch up to the person who's, of course, being carried away by the Earth. Now, an interesting thing happens at the ends of the Earth. You see, when you go from on a car trip from point A to point B, you're moving through what's called space, and it takes time to get through space. But if there is space, there must also be non-space. It's kind of like saying, if there is wet, there must be dry. You can't have one without the other. It's obvious. So when you get the end of the pizza model of the Earth, you're actually moving from space into non-space. Now you can move through non-space in no time. See, it takes time to move through space, but it takes no time to move through non-space. As they cross the Earth, they will then go into this non-space region. They will instantly then be able to reappear back where they started by taking a non-space route. The moon does this, the sun does this, and stars even do this at a very, very slow rate, moving from space into non-space and then reappearing back where they started from. This is due to a property of reflectivity and complementarity that is a well-known phenomenon. Don't know, you eliminate, and that's in my opinion is what the globular Earth theorists have done. They've just eliminated what they didn't know. The more honest approach is the flat Earth approach, where you say, well, we don't know what's at the ends, but the ends are there.
All I'm offering is the truth.